Hi, Cat's Cradle here. I want to share with you another old recipe, an old favorite of ours. When I was growing up, my best friend was one of 6 girls in her family. She was next to last, and I always loved to go over to her house and spend the night. It was always fun. But it got a lot more interesting when we were in our teenage years and her mother found out that she was pregnant and she had a little boy. And not more than about a year and a half later, she had a set of twin boys. So that house became very interesting. The oldest girl, I believe, was finishing college, so there was quite the range of age there, but it was always fun. I was always impressed that the family sat down to breakfast together. Everyone sat down together, and the table was set, and that's where I learned to eat peanut butter on waffles, because you couldn't feed bacon or sausage or meat to that crowd on a limited budget, but she could get protein in them by putting peanut butter on the table, and peanut butter was always on the breakfast table. The other thing I remember is that the dad in that family was the candy maker, and he made delicious peanut butter fudge, and I'm going to show you how. This recipe is very simple and can be made completely from food storage. In the pot I have sugar, and I'm going to add milk to it and stir that and begin to bring it to a boil. The other ingredients in the recipe are peanut butter, a little pat of butter, a dash of salt, and vanilla. So simple. I always store peanut butter in my food storage as well as my home canned butter, sugar, powdered milk, canned milk, and vanilla, so it can be completely a food storage recipe. How nice would this be to make for your family when you couldn't go to the store to buy a treat? So here the milk has gone in. I'm going to begin to stir the sugar just until I can tell that all of the sugar is dissolved. So I'm going to heat it and keep stirring, and then when all of the sugar is dissolved, I'm going to put my lid on the pot. Now, this is an interesting thing about candy making, and not a lot of people will tell you this. In fact, I tried making candy very unsuccessfully for many years before I learned this. Sugar, even though you've stirred it and it looks melted, the sugar that collects on the side of the pot is slightly cooler than that in the bottom, and it begins to get hard. And it forms long strands of sugar, and the more you stir, the more sugar is attracted to the sides of the pot, and it begins to build up. Well, that sugar, if it should fall into the hot liquid, becomes crystally, and it begins to form longer crystals within the boiling liquid, and it makes a candy that is not smooth. It doesn't taste as good. So what you do is you put the lid on when you're in the boiling stage. You're no longer stirring, and the condensation that forms on the lid will wash down the sides of the pan and dilute that crystallization that has built up on the edge of your pan and allow it to wash back down. It will dilute it and allow it to wash back down into the mix. Well, nobody ever told me that. Once I figured it out, it just made candy making so much easier. And for this recipe, you can see how simple it is. You just stir it until the sugar's dissolved and then put the lid on. What I'm waiting for now is for it to come to a soft boil stage, and you can buy a candy thermometer that will tell you when that happens, but I just don't see the need. I've got a little dish of cold water right here. I mean, it's cool out of the tap, and I'm going to drop my hot liquid into there, my hot syrup, when I think it's just about ready, and see if I've made it to the soft boil stage. After that, I will, when it's reached the right point, then I will put the other ingredients in. You can see I also had a greased 8x8 candy dish here. This doesn't make a ton of candy, which I'm kind of glad of because we really like it, and so we don't need that much of it. So here's my water. I'm going to drip a little of the syrup in there, and with my finger I'm going to go down and touch that syrup that's on the bottom and see if I can form it into a little ball. And I can tell now, I hope the camera's picking it up for you. See, I can gather it up and put it on my finger, so I know that's absolutely perfect. There we go. Yep, that's softball stage. I'm just going to discard that water in the sink, and I know that it's time to turn off my heat. move my pot off the heat because of course I'm going to be adding an alcohol-based flavoring here. A little bit of vanilla is going to go in. Yep, and of course it'll bubble up a little bit. Don't be surprised at that. And then I'm going to scrape in my peanut butter, my butter, and my salt. Just a tiny little pinch of salt. It makes anything that's very sweet taste better, in my opinion. You don't really have to work very quickly with this recipe because it does take a good while for this to set up. You're going to be, you may be thinking, oh, it's just not going to work, it's not working, but as you keep stirring and as it keeps cooling, you will start to see it try to set up on the surface. And when you start seeing that happen, you know that it's ready to pour. But it does take a little while. I'm just warning you. If you want it to go a little faster, you can put your pot on a rack or put a cold rag under it. You can see the green rag peeking out from under the bottom of my pot that I put under mine. Here's what you want. You want to, when you stir it with your spoon, you want to see it leave a trail. When you hold it up and drizzle it like that, you want to see it pile up just a little bit. I'm handing the camera to Prepper A here. You can see my little red rag, my little green rag under there. So I'm just taking that out now because it's cooled enough and I know it's just about ready to pour. See, when I scrape that back in the pot, you can see it. You can see it land in the pot. There we go. Now you do need to work kind of quickly because as you're scraping the hot candy out of that pot, the rest of the candy that's left in the pot is beginning to cool very quickly because you've removed most of the heat. So work kind of quickly here and get it into your pan. An 8x8 pan is perfect. If you have a little round Pyrex dish, you can pour it into that. It doesn't have to be exact. You just don't want it to get it in too big a pan because then the candy will be too thin. Just spread it to the corners. Sometimes if you've waited too long, it's hard to spread it because it wants to set up right away. And that's good. I don't want to fuss with it too much because if you fuss with it too much, the top gets ugly. So I'm going to let it cool. Takes about, well, it depends on how cold your house is. Takes maybe about 20 minutes, 30 minutes for it to cool. And then I'm just going to cut it. Sometimes I make little pieces, sometimes I make big pieces. It just depends on what I'm feeling. If you try to cut it too early, your knife will start dragging through the candy and it will not be pretty. So don't rush it. It's really hard to wait though to cut it because you want to see how it's coming out. It makes a good amount of candy. I wish I'd have waited before I cut it. I don't know, maybe 1.5 pounds, and it cost way less than $1 to make it. So I mean, just imagine what you would pay for that at a good candy store. I'm just going to put, it's Friday night, that's movie night for us, and instead of buying store-bought candy, I try to make something homemade. It may be sometime caramel popcorn, it may be cookies, it may be like this peanut butter fudge, or sometime my peanut butter balls, and you can find that recipe and video on my site as well. I'm just going to put these on a little cheese board under glass because it'll look special. Paladin Prepper will be really happy when he comes in because he really does like this. So when it's time to watch our movie, I'll just bring this out instead of some corporate candy. Most of it's made by Mars Corporation, and I don't want to feed my family corporate food, and why would I pay that expensive price and pay for all those preservatives when I can make something as delicious as my homemade peanut butter fudge. It really is just as simple as it looks. The ingredients are simple, the process is simple, and it's absolutely delicious. You can see how easy it is to get out of the pan. I just greased it lightly with butter. I hope you try it, and I hope you love it. It is really, really good. One of our family favorites. I hope my mother doesn't see this because if she does, I'll have to make her a batch and send it down to Texas. It's her absolute favorite. Enjoy. Cat's Cradle.